So in terms of running your workshop and how, people arrive, what happens? How does the workshop run? What do they learn when?
Well, we talked before about setting your intention, and we covered that really nicely about the people being thought about before they even step in the workshop. And to receive an email the night before or a couple of days before the workshop that you're going to attend shows that they're still being thought about, to inform them of what to bring, whether they can heat up their food, or whether they'll get a cup of coffee, or if there's an animal that's going to be in that workshop, or where they can park, they can put their things, and whether there's a bathroom.
And that's all pre-workshop. So then when people arrive to your workshop as a participant, I think through what we do in our workshops, where we start and where we get to, and I noticed that in learning, in understanding more how I wanted to run a workshop or how I wanted this space to run, there was lots of noticing of when do people start going like this?
Yes.
How much can they listen to? How much do they need to be on the tools? What's the order of things? What's a good time to have breaks? What's a good start time?
Yes.
What's a good end time?
When are we at our best as well? I wouldn't want to teach evening classes. That would not work for me at all. But other people might.
Yeah.
They might think evening's a great place to, have more people who can come at that time. But
and I guess it depends on the context of what you're teaching, because we are now running evening workshops, so we'll have our potluck dinner. And then for a couple of hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours, we'll have an evening session. But what we're teaching in that evening session is activities like knot tying.
What?
Knot tying. How to tie knots.
Oh, knot tying. Oh,
so we're running a workshop. Oh, it's the best.
Oh,
it's the
love
best.
That.
It's a lot of fun.
Tie knots.
And it's a very, it's a very quiet skill to learn. So I imagine if there's, I think about other things like that, weaving and leather work and all sorts of other workshops that we consider might be more appropriate for evening activities, where we don't really need such a high level of focus.
Yes.
If people are tying knots, they're tying knots. If they're using a drop saw, I have a very different facilitator role if someone's using a drop saw to when they're sitting down tying some knots.
I should think so.
So they're day workshops. I mean, my thing with day workshops is I want natural light coming in.
Yes.
I like the flow of morning tea break, a lunch break, and then kind of flowing into the afternoon. I think what I'm still learning is to get tighter on timing. I feel so when I run upskill, having run that since 5 years, I think I've run about 100 upskills. Like I feel every time I run an upskill, there's something I can change.
Oh, yes.
Something I can tinker, something I can shorten, something I can
same.
move over there.
Yes.
And so it's very specific, but it's delivered in a way that feels very casual.
And the fact that you want to tweak it is wonderful. It's so valuable to know that any of these classes can be made better, and that you're looking for ways to make them better for the student the whole time. And they're not just set in stone and this is how it runs and this is what's worked for 5 years. It's a wonderful atmosphere to be in, to know that something can change and move just because of what a student said or a student's needs or our needs. It's a really valuable thing for people to know that the classes move and shift.
Yeah, it's not a stagnant thing, hey? It's alive and changing. So when we run our workshops, we'll always have a check-in, introducing yourself, introducing how you feel, and what you're hoping to get out of the day.
Yes.
And usually those two go hand in hand, what people are feeling and what they're wanting to get out of the day.
Yes.
There's usually some relationship there, which I think helps us get to know each other a little bit. And actually take some time to listen to others, recognise that we're actually in a space where we're interacting with others. I mean, in the upskill workshop, I'm giving them a whole introduction to shedding, which doesn't happen in the other workshops, because I like to give them all this same sort of platform that they're starting from, that they feel familiar with shedding as a whole and with the space.
And including the values, which are really important to you,
Yeah, and there's pretty much a straight up, these are the values, you agree to them? Great. If you don't, it's not the place for you.
Yes.
Which I think is a pretty clear cut. So then what happens is upskill is I have a bench in the middle and I have all their benches around. And we basically copy, repeat, so that I can see everyone. And it'll be a pencil and a square, and I'm watching as we're doing it, and I'm checking. And if somebody's doing something, like what I find with, as we're working through the different steps, there's a lot of me asking, does that make sense? Does that make sense? And also asking if I can use people to demonstrate something. So if they're doing something in a different way, or answer their question to everyone. So if someone has a question, I notice there are usually a lot of people that have that question. Questions are a tricky one. I'll often say, I expect you'll have lots of questions. I'm going to try and arrive at this point, and if you still have that question, I really want to welcome you to ask. But I'm also giving information in a specific order.
Yes.
To try and lay on information as it's like, oh, I've absorbed that, here's a little more. Oh, I've absorbed that, here's a little more.
That's a good way to do it, so you don't get bombarded and distracted, and other people don't get distracted as well.
So that's upskill. In the soaring segment, I tend to give them the whole soaring segment.
Yeah.
And then get them to do it, because I used to do the stop and start as I was doing for the measuring marking. I'd be like, right, once you've got that there, okay, now pause. Now what we're going to do here. When I do that on the soaring segment, people were getting a bit miffed because they just want to soar. When you start soaring, you just want to soar. And then the drills and drivers are a lot of copy, repeat again. So that we're all... The idea is that we're all at the same point at the same time. Nobody gets behind because we're not separate. We're all together, and we're moving through this together and this together. And I think what they also get to see is we wait for the slowest person. And maybe the slowest person is the slowest person because they are getting the most out of each little bit. You know, I think there are a lot of stereotypes we put on being good or bad or slow or fast. Asking lots of questions or not asking any questions. And I think a lot of character comes out of people over the course of a workshop. And they're different.
It does.
Yeah, they're different characteristics. And when you run your workshop, you give that sort of intro as well. Hey, the intro to the world of wood.
Well, my personal story, like you do, very, very quickly, so 5 minutes of that, and then I check in with them, why they're here.
Yeah.
And I also ask them if they've got any woodworking background,
okay.
Or none, and that really helps them to relax when they find 2 or 3 other people just have no idea, never picked up a drill, never picked up a hammer.
Yeah.
And that can feel really nice for them, because I'm expecting complete beginners who have a clean slate, but then we'll also have someone who's done a bit, or they think they know stuff, and it's really valuable for them too.
I want to laugh because I like the way you say they think they know stuff.
They think they know stuff.
Because I love teaching beginners. They absorb so much with so much ease, and they teach people who have already... I mean, this is a thing for me with teaching here, is I say I'm not teaching you how to build... And I'm not teaching you the truth, and I'm not teaching you what's right versus what's wrong. I'm teaching you how we do things here.
Yes.
And we actually, where I've arrived probably in the last year or so with a lot more, I think I've given it more weight now, which feels good, is this is how we do things here. So we're actually teaching you a way of working on the tools that offers emotional and physical safety, not just for you, but for other people in the safe, including me as a facilitator. So there are things we've taken from your workshop, which is noise, right before using the power tool. Noise, and I say it to them, like, give it, like you said to us back in the day, so that you really... give it some, and you're like, here I am, I'm in presence, I'm making a noise, and this is a workshop, because you'll have some people over there having a little chat, and you think, oh, can I make this noise? So there are things like that I've taken from your workshop that I have found so valuable, but also I have found it valuable for people to say noise, because there's a moment when I can just go like this and just look over and see really easily they've got their safety glasses on, they've got their earmuffs on, their body's in a great position, and they'll often, before they do the cut, they'll just do a glance at me, and I'm there going, yay, you're all good. So what I've found is it actually offers me more freedom to give them more freedom.
Yes.
So I don't have to be standing side by side. And then in a really short amount of time, they're feeling very independent. And in fact, they are very independent on the tool.
Yes.
And then somebody walks in who's not been into the workshop before, and they think, oh, when did you learn table saw? Oh, 10 minutes ago. And so there's a level of independence, but the person who's walking in doesn't realise that there's a dynamic going on where we've agreed, well, this is how we're going to use the tool.
Yes.
I also have agreements that we have with the tools, which is not just about their physical safety, but is also about visibility for me from much further away. So where they might place their hands for things, when they're using particularly the table saw, the drop, well, all of the tools really, stay in your own lane. That's one of yours that I've used, which has been so helpful. I've got my lane, the tool's got its lane. All of these little go-tos, which have just led to so much in terms of safety.
The whole idea of what we do is we don't want people to be terrified of the tools. We want them to enjoy them as much as we love them. So creating an atmosphere that's safe with all these guidelines in place, like that you're talking about, is really vital for the person to feel competent. And so it is that person who wanders into the workshop who hasn't had any training at our workshops might say something inappropriate because they think,
what are you doing that for?
Yes, yeah, and it scares everyone.
Yeah, and it really does because it's so out of place.
Yes.
In the environment that we're creating. It might be quite normal. I know for me it was quite normal on the building site.
Yes.
What bloody hell are you doing with that? They might just be saying, what are you doing with that? I don't even know. It's just the language that is used in other places. I think that's something that is so important about the way we are choosing to run the workshops that we run.
It's all set up very
from that.
intentionally. The safety, the way we give people consideration there when they come, at the check-in that you give them as lovely, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
And giving people the opportunity to say, oh, I'm really tired or whatever.
Yeah.
Feels really nice and welcoming, right through to holding that tool. And if you pop into this body position, you'll find that tool much easier to use. Put a little bit of more weight here, or tuck your elbow in, or lean, or tighten up your clamp.
Yeah.
To support them in their journey of learning.
Yeah. And the other thing that came into my mind was PPE, personal protective equipment.
Very, very nurturing words.
What I call your eyes and ears.
Your eyes and ears.
I say, have you got your eyes?
Got your ears?
You used to say that, didn't you? Yeah.
Eyes and ears.
I've taken a lot from you.
Good.
Got your
Good.
eyes,
It
got
works.
your ears.
You take it because it works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So we've got safety glasses and we've got earmuffs that we use.
Yes.
We also have dust masks.
Yes.
Some of the tools like the table saw and the thicknesser, those tools make a fair bit of dust, which is another challenge of the internal versus external space. So I want to make reference firstly to the types of tools we use here. We like to, I think I mentioned with the hand tools, we like to have a range of hand tools of quality, few different brand names so people can try. What I like the idea of is that people can try a few things out. I know for myself there were tools that I bought, used, and then after using them I thought, I wish I'd bought a smaller drill, or I wish I'd bought the next size up of my drop saw. So my hope with shedding is that people can come and play and feel things out a little bit. Yes. So we've got all sorts of brands, Makita, Bosch, DeWalt, Ryobi. We've also had a lot of tools donated from different places. So by the nature of that, we have different brands. But a lot of the tools, the majority of the tools that we're using, I like the students to use battery-powered tools.
Yes.
And tools that are, I think it's one of the only things that we use that we will buy new, because I want people to learn tools that are good. I want people to learn tools that are good quality, because I remember trying to learn things with a blunt circular saw and thinking, this is dangerous. And it was, because it was a tool that was too heavy for me, the blade was too blunt, the power was much more extreme than I needed for some of these finer jobs.
Sure.
And actually thinking about the workshop setup, like at Little Baby Shedding on the veranda, we had the workbenches and a bunch of stuff stored underneath them, mostly old timbers and bits and bobs. But then we had the storeroom. Because the veranda was open air, at the end of every workshop, we'd pack away and put everything into the world's tiniest storeroom, the world's possibly most organised tiniest storeroom.
Indeed. Packing up is a thing, and it's not just some thing you do at the oh my God, it's 5:30. Oh, quick, let's get the hell out of here. Throw that there, or we'll do that tomorrow. It's actually part of the process of running your workshop. Running the workshop and of learning.
It brings me to the Shedding's next workshop after Upskill, which is the intro, Construct, which is the 4-day comprehensive tool training, we call it. After that, we have things like Space Makers, where students, now volunteers, come to make space together here. And the Co-Create co-working workshop, where people come to co-work, so work on their own project in a communal space.
Nice.
And there's a change there where I think we're talking more about the pack up, like what are your responsibilities? Now you've learnt tools, you're here to play, you're here to design, you're here to go and pick maybe your own materials out of, like, we've got a recycled stash where I say, have a look through this lot, see if you find something you're after. If you don't, or we can look through that lot, or we can look online and try, because it's a whole process using recycled materials. We don't just grab it and go.
Sure.
So when it comes to those workshops, there's a level of responsibility that I'm trying to hand back to students, where there's a bit more free form to the workshop. They're a bit more self-directed. And I'm also asking them, great, now we're in a position where I'd like you to take more responsibility, to know where things go, to know how things are kept. I mean, Space Makers in itself has become a 1 day a week maintenance day where we care for the workshop, because we're realising we can't just have people come and use it and have a great time and then go home, and then the workshop needs care. It needs us, to tidy up and sharpen the tools and put our collective intention into the space. Let's say we're talking to someone and they're like, I want to start a workshop. Do they just start a workshop? Is it handy to get people involved who already have skills on tools? Is it handy for them to try and get skilled up on tools? How many skills do they need? Like, I think about, it's probably a good point to reference. Like, what we're doing here is students will participate in a workshop. And if they're interested not just on the tools, but on the well-being and the people, there may be an invitation for them to come back as a mentor, so that they can start to learn how to teach, but they don't need to know everything. So that's another resource that people might like to access from other places, that they can come here and they can start to learn to teach. Because I imagine it could be a bit daunting to just go, all right, we're just going to start.
Yeah, you need to practice.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to touch, I think, on the stations. So with Construct, it's slightly different to Upskill. Upskill will be a copy and repeat thing. Everyone doing it at the same time, which works because we're using reasonably quiet tools, and we have enough tools for everyone to have one in front of them.
Yes.
For example, if I'm teaching the drop saw, we have one. We now have two drop saws. But we can't have everyone standing there with a drop saw at the same time doing the same thing, facing a person in the middle. So with Construct, it changes slightly, where there'll be a morning segment where we'll teach 3 different workstations. So we're very specific in the setup of how the workshop runs, that it always feels like someone's got somebody else with them.
So this is a structure. This is a whole structure that you've set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have 6 students, and we'll pair them up, so there are 3 pairs, and then we'll try and have 3 mentors who come in from a course. They've only just finished the last construct workshop, or maybe a few ago, so that each pair of students will have a mentor
who's been through that particular workshop,
who's been through it. And often what the mentor is doing is saying, remember when I did that, and I also split it.
Okay.
Don't worry, keep going, you're all good, we'll just grab you another one. So there's this in-betweeny person for the student and the teacher, which has felt so helpful, and also just extra eyes on people. So we have the 3 pairs, and we'll have 3 stations. And so in the morning, we'll run through the 3 stations. And then in the afternoon, they participate in the 3 stations.
Okay.
So the morning is actually all demonstrations, and then we have lunch. And then the afternoon is like, woohoo!
To keep flowing
as
well, to keep the flow going.
And I think there certainly is a little point about 15 minutes before lunch where it's like, really want to get on the tools right now, where the students really want to get on the tools. And then after lunch they get to. Which is interesting, because I know for myself after lunch can be a time where I'm feeling a little bit lower in energy, typically. The stations are so useful. So they're physically rotating, they're moving to different stations together. So they'll start at one and it'll say drop saw station. And they might even have a list of the steps that we've just explained, so that they get that reference again. Actually, that's the way we do it for Construct in the first 2 workshops. So it's a 4-day thing. They do the first 2 days. I think in the last 2 days, we also start to bring in, they start to work on their projects more independently. So in the first days, we're just table sawing timbers. We're not table sawing my timbers or your timbers. We're working together, collaboratively, to table saw timbers, drop saw timbers, make some stacks of different timbers so that we've got now timber that's ready to go. And then when they start building specifically their own project, then we'll usually, we still do rotate around tables, but towards the end they start to have like their own workbench. And then when they step into co-create, which is the co-working space, they step in to start that day, and we go, great, we're going to set you up with a bench. This is your bench for the day. So the other thing I found really helpful with the stations is to have everything there, so they can identify when I'm at this station, when I'm doing the countersink holes, I will have a sharp pencil and a square and a ruler and the countersink bit, and the clamps are there. It's kind of like Jamie Oliver's kitchen.
Who's?
Jamie Oliver.
Oh, Jamie Oliver's
You know, when he's got all the capsicums been cut. You don't have to do anything. You just take all these cute little dishes and go like this and chuck them in and cook something. It's all done for you.
Magic.
So I find that really helps them. However, it doesn't help them to know where the tools have come from.
No.
Because I may have already set up the table. So then that's where they're also learning a bit of that in co-create. So it's trying to layer information. Like, I don't want them straight away to need to think, where does everything go?
No.
I just want them to think, I'm going to cut a straight line. And how does this feel? I just want them to be in that. And then it's like, okay, here's some more information and more.
So always, I think, running a workshop, you're always looking for flow. Always looking for flow of the students to be doing and listening and doing and listening, so that you keep their interest. That's what we try and set up. That's what we're constantly tweaking and trying to accommodate everyone.